Myles, we've got to start with what happened on Monday night in Seattle. And I want to get your view of what happened at the end of that game when most people or all people who listen to this podcast know that there was about 58 seconds to go when the Denver Broncos stopped play for a moment after it was 4th and 5. And they're in position either to kick a very long field goal, turned out to be a 64-yard field goal, or Russell Wilson could have gone for it on 4th and 5. They also had 3 timeouts left. Instead of calling timeout to go and rationally discuss the options at the sidelines, they let the clock go down to 20 seconds. It was just a stunning display, I thought. I don't know whether you'd call it hubris by Nathaniel Hackett, the man coaching his first game for the Denver Broncos, who looked cool as a cucumber on the sidelines. But when they finally did call the timeout with 20 seconds left, Brandon McManus went onto the field for the field goal, and obviously he missed the 64-yard field goal wide left. He had never made a field goal longer than 61 yards in his career, and so here we are. Myles, take me through what you thought when you were watching.
Yeah, well, I mean, as they get to 4th down and 5, I think, okay, well, this is a perfect position now because you have Russell Wilson, right? You have 3 timeouts. I thought they were going to get right to the line, try to keep Seattle's defense off guard, and then let's see what Russell Wilson can do. I mean, this is why you trade for a quarterback like Russell Wilson. This is why you sign Russell Wilson to a huge contract extension, so you can see what he can do when the chips are down and it's 4th down and 5, and you need a first down. You need to be able to extend the drive, keep it going. I mean, I know everybody's probably seen by now that clip of Peyton Manning on the Manning cast, and he's just doing this. Okay, timeout, right? And I didn't necessarily know if they were going to go timeout, or if they were just going to say, all right, we've got to play. Let's get to the line and let's go. And I think the word you use with hubris is great, because it's like, okay, they knew that they wanted to get to a certain point for Brandon McManus. And McManus even tweeted like, that's where, hey, that's the line that I said that I could hit it from. I've got to go and I got to go hit the kick. But at the same time, the first thing I thought when they said, oh, yeah, they're going to send out the field goal team, I'm like, does Nathaniel Hackett think he's in Seattle? Like, they're not at altitude. And I don't really understand exactly why you're more confident. And this is what he said in the postgame. He said he was more confident in McManus hitting that field goal from 64 yards than Russell Wilson getting 5 yards on 4th and 5. And I to me, Peter, that is absolutely stunning. And I don't really recall a situation where a coach just has that much trust in his kicker over a quarterback who we know is one of the elite players in the game.
I'll just make a couple of points about this that I think probably are obvious, but I'm not sure that, in the wake of the emotion of this game, because this was a very emotional game. And I just want to start at the beginning, if I can. First of all, I thought it was absolutely Bush League of the Seattle fans to boo Russell Wilson from the jump. And someone who's close to me went to the game last night as we record this on Tuesday and said that the absolute fury of the crowd against Russell Wilson was shocking.
Wow.
And I agree that, and my only point, and I made it in Football Morning in America this week, is that once the game starts, once, you originally, once you're into competition, all's fair in love and war. I get it. Boo the living crap out of them. But just to remind people, okay, when Russell Wilson walked on campus in Seattle in 2012 as the 75th pick in the draft, once he walked on campus, in the previous 10 years, the Seahawks were 2 games over 500 collectively, had made the playoffs 3 times. In his 10 seasons, and granted, I totally understand people who say, it was the defense. Whatever it was. In the 10 years that Russell Wilson was there, they were 51 games over 500 and made the playoffs 8 times. So a decade of 2 games over 500 making the playoffs 3 times, or a decade of 51 over 500 making the playoffs 8 times. Okay? And
did they do a tribute video? I'm not sorry to interrupt you, but like, did they do a tribute video?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. See that, because that would
I don't
be
know
where
whether they
I'm
did.
like, yeah, because I would feel like they should, seeing as how he accomplished everything that you just said. Because I would agree with you where it's like, okay, all is fair once the game starts. He's an opponent. He's the enemy, right? This is what what Aaron Donald was saying about Von Miller. Like once the game starts, he's the enemy. It doesn't matter what's going on. But tribute video before, it's like, yeah, you really should at least give him his props for everything that he accomplished, including winning a Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, and so that is number one. That I just thought it was small of that crowd. They have obviously been sold a story that Russell Wilson desperately wanted out, which I do think he wanted out. But on the other hand, I think the other part of this story is that the Seattle Seahawks clearly chose their way of operation and a 70-year-old coach in Pete Carroll over 10 more years of Russell Wilson or 8 more years of Russell Wilson, whatever. Yep. And as ESPN reported last week, I think it was a Brady Henderson story, that there are those inside the Seahawks that thought Russell Wilson was headed on a downward spiral. Maybe, we'll see. But I don't care where he's headed. I don't care what the thing is. To have booed him at the start last night in that game, I thought it was just wrong. Now let's get to the call itself. I found it very interesting. And, I've got a partnership now with Next Gen Stats that I'm going to be doing stuff in my column every week with their analytics, with their statistical bend. And I'm really looking forward to that through the course of the year. But they had a very interesting set of tweets, statistics during and after this football game on Monday night. Next Gen Stats said the odds of Brandon McManus making a 64-yard field goal in this game, which was 3 yards longer than any field goal he had ever made in his career. The odds were 14.2%. While the odds of Russell Wilson converting a 4th and 5 were 42.1%. Not to even take in the emotion of the situation where Russell Wilson, I'm sure, is give me the ball, put it on my shoulders.
Right.
And so we'll never know what would have happened. Would Seattle have stopped him? I'm sure they think so. Would Wilson have made it? I'm sure he thinks so. But I just think that Nathaniel Hackett had it in his head, I want to get to a specific yard line, and then I am trying the field goal. And what is the kicker supposed to say to him? I don't know, coach. I don't know if I can get this one. Obviously, before the game, when you're down on the field, you hear this all the time from field goal kickers. Well, I felt great from 58 to 62, whatever. I was down on the field kicking them before the game. Well, what is it like when there are 11 men rushing you? And you're not just kicking against air. What exactly is that like? So I thought it was an awful decision. Awful. There's no other way to put it. And I think that once Nathaniel Hackett thinks about it, and I'm sure he's had some time to think about it, I'd be shocked if he got much, if any, sleep on Monday night. He'll realize that whether he says it or not, whether he admits it or not, he should have done something different.
It was one of those rare decisions that everybody hated from, a data analytics standpoint, conventional wisdom football standpoint. Everybody hated that decision as soon as it happened. I mean, Peter, I haven't taken a math class in a really, really, really long time, and I was never really that good at math, which is why I went into sports writing. But you're telling me 14% versus 42%? That's something almost like a 30% difference, and I don't like those numbers, right? And I really just don't like the conventional wisdom either of looking at it from where you are on a football field and saying, yes, let's go for a 64-yard field goal, which would be one of the longest field goals of all time. And again, you're not at altitude. And if they were in Denver, I might have understood it a little bit more because it's easier to kick when you are a mile high, above sea level. But just when you're looking at that, and again, you've got the personnel that you have, your offense is averaging something like 6.5, 7 yards per play. You just got nearly 10 yards on 3rd down and 14. Like, all of the things to me were going in the Broncos offense favor. I just can't understand why they got to that point and then said, oh yeah, that's where Brandon McManus said he could kick it from. So let's go do it. Like, you gotta be better in those in-game situations if you're Nathaniel Hackett.
And I think, as you said, Myles, this is one decision that I can't find anybody who even in a, well, I understood what he was doing because this, and this.
Right.
I just, we're all mind boggled by it. Okay.
Peter, the Broncos
own Austin Eckler.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, one thing before we do it, the Broncos' own post-game show that they put up on social media, their pundits at their own desk were saying that it was a wrong decision. That tells you how universally that it was disliked.
Yeah. It's interesting. The Broncos are very much a don't worry, be happy organization. Everything is good news and all that, and they've had a lot of things to be happy about in this offseason. Rich new owners, rich new quarterback, but that was not a great moment for him last night. How do you see this game Thursday night, and what were your takeaways coming out of that game on Sunday against the Raiders?
Yeah, I think this is one of those really big early season divisional matchups where you kind of start to stack what these teams are and what they can be later on in the year. And I think obviously when you're talking about the Chiefs and the Chargers, these two teams met early last season too, and it really was kind of a turnover fest for the Chiefs when they were at Arrowhead. And you know that they don't want to do that this year. I think the Chiefs obviously have such a big target on their back just based on the way that they've dominated that division over the last few years. And they've hosted, the last 4 AFC conference championship games in their building. So everybody knows that in the AFC, you have to take down the Chiefs if you really want to get to where you want to go. And that's doubly so if you're the Chargers because they're in your own division. And honestly, when you've got 2 young quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, like Justin Herbert, and those 2 dudes are just so darn good. I'm looking forward to any time I get to see those 2 line up against each other, but especially now early in the season where the Chiefs had a great game dominating the Arizona Cardinals, and the Chargers were able to hold on and defeat another division rival in the Raiders after they came out great on Sunday, Peter. I mean, I really thought Justin Herbert in that first half of that game looked like an MVP. He made some outstanding throws, in the third quarter as well, that specifically that touchdown he had to Gerald Everett on the left sideline. But I mean, he just does things with the football. And I've seen articles where they talk about how quick he processes his reads, that it's just really, really special. I've seen different quarterbacks across the league. I've covered a lot of games, but there is just something that is so special with the arm talent of Justin Herbert and the way that he can go through things and the way that he can move in the pocket, the way he can create space with his legs. And then sometimes he's moving left and he can still make that throw to his right. I mean, what he does is unbelievable. So if the Chargers can go in there and topple the Chiefs early on in the season, I think that will say a lot about what the Chargers' potential is here in 2022.
Yeah, I kind of look at this game, especially because of the, in essence, here's what the Chargers are doing this week. They're not practicing. They're having a couple of walkthroughs today. Like, quite literally, they are going to have 2 walkthrough practices. They did nothing on Monday. They're going to have 2 walkthrough practices today, Tuesday. They're going to get together on Wednesday morning. Don't know what they're going to do Wednesday morning, but on Wednesday they fly to Kansas City. So they will have done nothing really physical all week before this game. And obviously, it's an interesting way to approach what arguably is one of your 2 or 3 most important games of the season. If you want to win the AFC West, you've got a minimum split with Kansas City. So here's one of those chances. Justin Herbert has already won a game against Kansas City at Arrowhead, so it's not that foreign to him. And I just look at this basically saying that they're kind of playing with house money, but at the beginning of the season, the reason that I picked the Chargers to win this division is that I think they can go 4-2 in this division, which I think you have to do at least to beat Kansas City. So this is going to be their first test. What was encouraging to me is that last year, by the end of the year, teams are running on them every week like it was a track meet. They lost the game against the Raiders in Week 18, the final game 272, because they simply could not stop the run. And so the way I look at this is they're coming off a game where they allowed 68 rushing yards. I forget what it was. But they didn't allow a lot of rushing yards, and they obviously had enough explosive plays to play a good team with a very good pass rush and, to play them very well. So I like this matchup, and I like it at this time of year. The other reason is I want to see these teams when they're both near full strength.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that we're going to see this early. And the one other thing about this game that I think is going to be very interesting, especially in a new broadcast sort of venue with Amazon Prime. So I'm kind of looking forward to the telecast. I'm looking forward to see what a brilliant guy like Fred Gaudelli, and look, I work for the same place that he does, so that, truth in advertising or whatever, fairness. I think he's going to have some really interesting wrinkles as the guy putting on this show. And, let's see how Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit do in their first game.
Yeah, it was trippy a little bit when they did that preseason game, 49ers and Texans, and you hear Kirk Herbstreit talking about the NFL, and you're like, huh, like that's, I've heard it. I know that they've done games with Chris Fowler, but like to hear Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, it tripped me out a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But those two guys are at some of the best who have ever done it at what they do. So to bring them together, I'm looking forward to it too. You brought it up earlier. Is anybody going to know exactly where to go to just watch this game on Amazon Prime? Because the one thing I thought was interesting was that I'm a pretty savvy tech guy. I'm not like the most savvy in the world, but I understand how to use apps. That's kind of, I guess, my generational, talent, if you will. But when you went to Amazon Prime for that early preseason game, right, you had to go through, 2, 3, 4 menus just to get to the game. I didn't really understand why there wasn't just a watch now button that happened exactly when you open Prime. Or if it's, what is it going to be, 7 o'clock, 7:30 Eastern when they start their pre-show stuff? Shouldn't that just be the one thing that comes up when you open Amazon Prime? Because, if somebody doesn't want to watch that, fine, just hit the back button on your remote.
I
and you'll
feel
be all
pretty
right.
sure
Yeah.
that I feel pretty sure that by Thursday night they will. And I've got this new fun thing that I'm sure everybody's going to hear me and say, okay, old man, time to go back to bed. I've got this new device called the Fire Stick, which I've never used before, but I'll be using it Thursday night, to try to find. I think we have Amazon Prime. My wife and I both have it, so I should be able to figure out some way to get this done. You have it, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've got it. I've had it
Yeah.
for years. It was very great in college when you needed all your textbooks shipped to you.
Amazon Prime shipping textbooks. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's hit the other topics du jour. I'll ask you the question: should Dallas stick with Cooper Rush in the wake of the Dak Prescott injury and the fact he's out probably for 5 or 6 weeks? Should they stick with Cooper Rush, or should they go out and try to pry a quarterback from some team?
It's funny because obviously Jimmy Garoppolo would be the one where I think everybody is kind of like, okay, well, could they go get him? But Garoppolo's got a no trade clause. And I don't know if I'm Jimmy Garoppolo, why I would be interested in Dallas, where, it's only going to be a 5, 6, 7, maybe week stint that I'm starting here. And I don't really know that offense. If he were going to some place like Miami or the Jets or someplace where they have that scheme already that comes from the Kyle Shanahan playbook, then I would understand it a little bit more. But, a buddy of mine was like, man, I wish that the Cowboys could maybe go get Gardner Minshew, but like the Eagles aren't trading him to Dallas. So that's not going to happen. Yeah. At this point, I just feel like you've got Cooper Rush. You made your bed with your backup QB, just laying it, because unless you're the 2017 Eagles, like usually when your starting quarterback goes out for a little bit, your season is going to come off the rails a little bit. And that's just the nature of the quarterback position.
Look, I'll tell you what would worry me if I were the Cowboys right now. We didn't do anything very well in this game, even before Dak Prescott got hurt. 14 of 29 in this game. They did not play the run well. They gave up 152 rushing yards to Tampa, which is not a premier running team. And, to me, somebody asked me before the season, geez, you didn't put Dallas as one of your 7 playoff teams in the NFC. Why? I say, it's always something with Dallas. I don't know what it's going to be this year, but every year it is always something. And now, obviously, I feel bad for Dak Prescott. He's such a good person, and you never want to root against anybody. I feel bad for him, but this falls into the category of it's always something with them. And unless Cooper Rush plays well in his absence, and I'm not saying how many games he has to win, but unless he plays well, a mountain of crap is going to come down on owner/GM Jerry Jones's head for not backstopping a position where the quarterback in recent years has gotten hurt some. So that to me is the biggest issue going in here. I don't think they're going to make a trade. I don't think they're going to do anything different than Cooper Rush for the next month plus. But, man, there's a lot of pressure on Cooper Rush to play competently.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, to me, because you've seen them backstop that position well in the past with Andy Dalton, right? And he was there in 2020. And obviously things didn't necessarily work out as to, the Cowboys still being good enough to make the playoffs that year. That didn't happen. But at the same time, when you know what has happened there in the past, you have to feel like, man, okay, can I at least tread water with the backup quarterback that I have? I don't know that Dallas is going to be able to do that. And, you said not having them in your playoff field before the season. I picked them to be 7th. I picked the Eagles to win the division because to me, you can see exactly how the Eagles got better. I don't really know how Dallas got better over the offseason. I know how they a lot of people left. Yeah, exactly. Right. Last night we're watching Gregory pass rush for the Denver Broncos. Not the Dallas Cowboys. Amari Cooper is in Cleveland, and I know the contract situation was this and was that, but like, they didn't get better. You have other teams in that division that did. And, if Carson Wentz can play like he did at the end of that game for Washington, who knows what the Commanders can be? Like, is it out of the question for Dallas to finish third? Is it out of the question for Dallas to finish fourth if things continue the way that they did with the Giants? I don't know.
Could you imagine if the New York Giants finished ahead of the Dallas Cowboys in the standings? I mean, first of all, we've already appointed Sean Payton the coach of the Cowboys. And, for next year, I mean, could Sean Payton be the coach of the Cowboys by Thanksgiving? Anyway, we'll see. Let's go to how much trouble are Cincinnati and the Rams in. I'm going to take Cincinnati for a second, Myles, and I want you to take the Rams. And I'm going to tell you what really worried me about the Bengals on Sunday. And okay, look, I know that the strength of the Pittsburgh Steelers is in their defensive front, and that's pre the loss of TJ Watt, okay? But the strength is in the front. But with the caving in of an offensive line that the Bengals spent so much time and free agent money and so much of their cap, this is what they wanted to fix in the offseason. And when I saw that game against Pittsburgh, they have not fixed that line. And to go forward knowing that your whole franchise and the future of your franchise is Joe Burrow, if he has to run for his life and get as much pressure as he had on Sunday, because quite honestly, that looked to me as much pressure as Burrow was under in the Super Bowl, they're in big, big trouble. I think turning it over 5 times, total outlier. Every quarterback from Sid Luckman to Dan Fouts to Dan Marino, has had those kind of games over the years. So that doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is the pressure on Joe Burrow. What bothers you about the Rams coming off the Thursday night game?
Well, I would say much the same. It's the pressure, right? I mean, Buffalo was able to generate so much pressure with just 4 guys on Matthew Stafford. And when that happens, you see the result, right? The Rams could not get anything going offensively, particularly in that second half. And if that's the case, right, then that team is going to look like that. But I mean, it's not like we haven't seen them have kind of bad performances based off of pressure before. I go back to last year when they played Tennessee at home, and a sort of similar phenomenon happened. Matthew Stafford got pressured all day long. He looked really bad. That offense couldn't get into any sort of rhythm, and then Tennessee ended up winning that game. And that Tennessee is one of the class of the AFC teams, at least they were last year, right? They were the number 1 overall seed. But I think Buffalo could be very similar. So it's not necessarily that I think the Rams are totally broken, like they've got such a horrible Super Bowl hangover, they're not going to be able to do anything. No, but I think it's fair to be concerned about an offensive line and an offensive unit that allows that much pressure on the quarterback, because if that's what's going to happen over the course of the season, the Rams are not going to be anywhere close to what they were in 2021.
You know, the most times that Matthew Stafford has been sacked since he came to the Rams happened in this game against Buffalo. 7 sacks, 16 total pressures. 4 of the 5 games that he's been pressured the most in his Rams tenure, 4 of those 5 games they lost. There's no question Sean McVay has got to figure out a way.
The one they didn't, and you pointed this out in your column, Peter, that was the NFC Championship game last year when they beat San Francisco. So, I mean, it's not that they can't handle it. They've shown that they have the ability to be able to move past stuff like that. But, I mean, 4 of the 5 are L's. So that tells you a lot about where they are.
Third topic, can the Giants play a different kind of football? A very heavy run-based football if Saquon Barkley stays healthy? Can they keep doing this? And can they somehow, some way, find a way to contend in a year that totally looked like a lost season?
Yeah, I think that they can. I mean, I'm not sure how exactly sustainable it is for Saquon Barkley to run as he did. I mean, I was very impressed by that game, by Brian Daboll and what Mike Kafka did calling the plays. I just was not expecting them to beat Tennessee. And I loved the call from Daboll to go for two. You're a first-time head coach. You're in your first game. Do it. Show the stones. What do you have to lose? Go out there and show that aggressiveness. I love what he told you about going around to those defensive guys and saying, hey, if we get this touchdown, you want to get it in there? You want to go for it? And they're like, hell yeah. And they said, okay, Kafka, get your best 2-point play ready. And then, of course, he goes a little shovel pass. And yeah, Mike Kafka once coached for the Chiefs. All right. You can tell when he's doing those kinds of things. So I love that. Right. I loved that. And I think that if they can play like that, then you might see the Giants become one of those teams where it's like, oh, man, they didn't look like anything last year. But now new staff, you got new guys evaluating the talent. You got new guys coaching up the talent. It can make a real difference.
What's amazing to me of all the amazing things, like if I was in a survivor pool this weekend, I would have picked Tennessee. So I'd be gone. Okay. But even more amazing than all the survivor pools that are dead right now because of the Giants beating Tennessee is the fact that the Tennessee Titans just allowed 238 rushing yards in a game. Yes. That blows me away against the New York Giants. 238 yards. I will guarantee you that is not going to. I'll make a vow. No Mike Vrabel team this season will allow 238 yards rushing in a game again. That is a flat-out guarantee. But good news for the Giants. All right, the New York Jets. So for those who don't care about the New York Jets or who perhaps missed what happened with Robert Saleh in the wake of their opening day 24-9 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Robert Saleh in his press conference on Monday said two things that I just said, man, why did you say those things? Number one, in my opinion, we did not get beat. We lost. Those are two totally different things. No, they're not. No. You know what they are? They're two different things semantically. But there's no difference in getting beat and losing. None. Yeah. Here's the other thing he said. We're taking receipts on all the people who continually mock and say that we aren't going to do anything. I'm taking receipts, and I'm going to be more than happy to share them with all you when it's all said and done. That was in his press conference. A little bit later in the afternoon, he went on the Michael Kay show on ESPN radio in New York, and he said, I can't wait to shove it down everyone's throat when it comes around. And I just say, you're 4-14 as a head coach. 4-14. And those are the kind of things that you say that absolutely unequivocally come back to haunt you, that make more problems for you than you need to have. And again, I'm all for guys speaking their mind, Myles. Yeah. But I'm not for guys saying something that is going to make another roadblock, another talking point for all the people who say same old Jets. How did you see it?
Oh, I see it very similarly. I mean, maybe something like that will help galvanize the locker room. Maybe. I don't know. But, I mean, they're still going to trot out Joe Flacco this week, right? Unless they have a change of heart and they decide they want Mike White, which, frankly, I would rather see Mike White play at quarterback than I would Joe Flacco at this point. But, what do I know? I guess I'm just a sports writer. But I don't really understand why you feel a need to say all of these things so publicly when they really could come back and bite you in the rear end. I mean, there's just, like you said, there's no reason to do it. And look, it could be fine. They could go out there. They could start shocking us, playing the Browns. Like, I don't know. I don't really see it. But, man, if the Jets don't do well, I mean, then we have all the receipts. And all we're going to do is say, man, what was Robert Saleh doing? Like, there's no net positive from this. There just really isn't. Yeah. Just go and coach the team, man. Get some wins first. And then you come back and you say, remember when you guys all wrote us off? Like, but before you do it, like, come on now, don't do that.
Before you do it, you've got to win games. You just do. Because otherwise you're digging yourself a hole. You're giving yourself more problems. Look, there's 94 other things that we could talk about, but we are fresh out of time. The debut, Peter King, Myles Simmons combo platter on this podcast. We're going to have to say goodnight, even though it's during the day. So, Myles Simmons, thanks so much for joining me this week. This has been the Peter King Podcast. We're going to be back next week. I have no idea what's going to happen during the course of this week. That starts on Thursday night, some interesting games on Sunday, and then the ESPN ABC twin bill on Monday, which I'm still a little bit confused about that. Starting one game at 7, which I like, Eastern time, and the other game at 8:30. I guess everybody's going to need 2 screens. I see that, but just not that big a fan of what they're doing. But anyway, we'll see how it works with the ratings. So thanks for joining me this week on the Peter King Podcast. Myles Simmons and I will be back next week for another edition of the Peter King Podcast.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.